Hello, everyone. I am Pranay Kutasthane and I am on the Taking It Slow podcast. Please listen to this podcast and do share, subscribe, like, and tell everyone about this podcast and spread the word.
It's another Sunday. You know what that means. It's time to take it slow. और विशु क्या हाल चाल?
या भैया मैं ना बहुत ही फनी हालचाल और बहुत सैड हूँ आज। मेरी
दिख
शक्ल
रहा
से
है,
नहीं लग रहा होगा।
दिख रहा है,
मेरी
दिख रहा
शक्ल से
है।
नहीं लग रहा होगा। तो ना आपको पता होगा कि मैं ना अपने आप को समझता हूँ कि यार मुझे तो फाइनेंस का
बहुत
काफ़ी
स्मार्ट
कुछ
है।
आता है।
बहुत स्मार्ट है,
फाइनेंस
लगता है।
मतलब एकदम बहुत सही आता है। तो
हम्म।
अभी थोड़े दिनों पहले हमारे पॉडकास्ट पे गेस्ट आया था जो कि ही वाज़ अ सेबी रजिस्टर्ड
रजिस्टर
इन्वेस्टमेंट
एनालिस्ट,
एडवाइज़र, ठीक
एनालिस्ट
है?
है।
तो इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइज़र, ठीक है?
हम्म।
तो मैंने सोचा कि हाँ यार इसको बनने के लिए क्या करना होता होगा? ठीक है, तो फिर मैंने सर्च करा सारा और उसमें था कि बस तुम्हें 2 टेस्ट देने होते हैं, NISM है, नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ सिक्योरिटी में है, वो 2 सर्टिफिकेट चाहिए और तुम्हें वो दो और तुम्हें मिल जाएगा, फिर सेबी से रजिस्टर कर दो कुछ
तो
पैसे
ये
देके।
टेस्ट था जो तू देने वाला था फाइनेंस का। नाइस।
हाँ, हाँ, ठीक है। अरे सुनो, उसके
हम्म।
बाद ना मैंने कोरा पे पढ़ा कि क्या होता है ये, क्या करते हैं, तो उसमें एक बंदे ने लिखा हुआ था कि तुम लोग ना ऐसे ज़्यादा ये सेबी रजिस्टर्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट एडवाइज़र पे ज़्यादा वो मत करो, मतलब
हाइप मत
भरोसा
करो
पहले।
उसको।
हाँ, पहले देखो कि वो कैसा है, कैसा नहीं है, क्योंकि वो जो 2 टेस्ट है ना, वो मतलब बहुत ही ईज़ी होते हैं, मतलब कि कोई भी पास कर ले। आई थिंक बाय नाउ यू नो कि ये स्टोरी कहाँ जा रही है।
कहाँ जा रही है स्टोरी?
तो मैं कहा यार ये तो कोई भी पास कर लेगा और मैं तो एकदम फाइनेंस का 30 मार खान हूँ। तो मैं सोचा और उसके लिए मतलब रजिस्टर किया मैंने टेस्ट के लिए और एक बुक थी, बस एक ही बुक थी उसकी। एंड मेरे को लगा हाँ मैं पढ़ लूँगा एंड उसके वो पास करने के लिए 100 में से बस 60 मार्क्स ही होते हैं, बस।
तेरे कितने आए?
चलो अब लेट्स कंटिन्यू। आज हमारा गेस्ट which was supposed to be a very easy test, पता है? Very
या
easy test होता है वो तो।
जैसे तू
यार
अपने आप को फाइनेंस में एक्सपर्ट मानता है, हम लोग खुद को पॉलिसीज में
सब
एक्सपर्ट
लोग हाँ।
मानते हैं। हम सब लोग, हमको सबको पता है कि देश के लिए क्या अच्छा है, क्या बुरा है, हमारा देश कहाँ जा रहा है, हमें उसके लिए कुछ करना चाहिए। सो वी थॉट व्हाई नॉट गेट समवन हु एक्चुअली knows what he's talking about, who actually does this for a living. So we have someone on the podcast who is the head of research at Takshila Institution. He teaches policy making and he has been doing it for around 7 years now. He's an expert in international relations. So, mota, he knows what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, he's
And
educated.
this turned out to be a very educational session for me. It turned out to be a very refreshingly mind opening session for me. And I hope it is the same for you as well. Just a word of advice, try to listen to it from an absolutely open mind without any notions or any preconceived
Yeah, from a
misconceptions.
neutral
Just keep
perspective.
from a neutral perspective. So, without any further ado, let's dive right in, people. Our guest today is someone who heads research at the Takshashila Institution. Very pleased to have on the Taking It Slow podcast, Pranay Kotasthane. Hey, Pranay, how are you, man?
Hey, hi, folks. Good to be here.
Hey, hi Pranay.
Pranay, I'll not take any attempts at describing your job. So, tell us what do you do?
So, yeah, I drink coffee at our office mostly
Brilliant.
and get coffee for others. That's my second. That's what I do. But and I also do other things sometimes. Like I do teach public policy at Takshashila Institution. So we are a school of we are a center for independent research and education in public policy. So I do a lot of teaching. I do a lot of research on foreign policy, international relations, public finance. I also run a podcast called Pulyabazi, which is a
Yep.
Hindi podcast, and I write a
A
newsletter.
must listen to podcast, by the way, for anyone who hasn't listened to it so far. Do yourself a favor and check it out.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Pranay, now you have to say that Taking It Slow podcast is a must listen podcast.
Yeah.
In due time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I like you guys. I am an engineer. I also worked for 6-7 years designing mobile chips. Was interested in public policy, so moved into this. It's been 7 years, and I'm still having fun. So yeah. That's
I was pretty surprised to see that. Like, I just opened your LinkedIn before this, and I was like, you are not an engineer just by degree. Like, you were an engineer
Mm.
by career
My
also. Like, you were in
profession,
Texas
yes.
Instruments, and which is like a dream company to so many people.
You
Like,
actually do
how did
what
this?
you learned in college.
Yeah, like, how did this change come about? And like, bas
I
PhD
think
करना है.
no, I think doing something for 7 years is good enough. So I did that for 7 years. I had fun, and I thought, let me try something else. And yeah, like you, Vivek, like I'm sure you also had this urge that why is India's governance so bad, right? Like why is our society in the 21st century, but our governance is in the 19th century? So there's this dichotomy, right? And you feel this urge, khujli hoti hai, kuch to karna
Yeah,
hai. You need to change
कुछ
things,
बदलना
right?
है.
Yeah, so that was pretty much my motivation as well, that can I be an instrumental in trying to bring change. And no change in India happens with 30 people or even 30,000 people. It requires transforming India as a marathon, we always say. So yeah, we are running our part in this marathon. Maybe sometimes somewhere down the line some positive changes will happen.
Pranay, tell us a little more about Takshashila Institution.
Yeah, so Takshashila Institution, as I said, is a center for research and education in public policy. We are based out of Bangalore, but we operate around the world. Primarily, we have courses in public policy, defense and foreign affairs, technology policy, health and life sciences. People who are interested in knowing why Indian governance is the way it is, they are primarily people who join the courses. So outside the government, we can say we've produced the most number of people in India who are educated in the fundamentals of public policy. So close to 4,000 people have graduated, and these are all people
Wow.
like you and I who are working
Yeah.
professionals, but they want to know about public policy. In fact, I am a student of the course that I teach at. When I was at Texas Instruments, I took this
Oh,
course.
awesome. Yeah.
That was it. And we also do research on primarily three areas, which is geopolitics. Then we do a lot of research on public finance, economic policy, and thirdly on technology policy. So everything from biotech to space. These are some interesting areas that we pick up and we do research on. We write policies, we write bills, etc.
You know what, Abhi, when you were telling us all about this, so I started to recollect how did this episode happen? How did it come about? So I was planning to do an episode on the recent protests that have been taking place, the farmers' protest. Before that, there have been a series of protests in India over the last year or so. Then the toolkit incident happened, the backlash to it happened. So I thought that we should do an episode about it. We should talk more about it. People should know about what is going on one layer beneath whatever is visible to the public eye. So I reached out to my circle and I asked a couple of my friends, who is the smartest man that you know who I can talk to this about, and that eventually led me to Pranay, and now I am not at all surprised after that intro. So he legit teaches public policy for his profession. And let us get right off the mark. There have been a number of protests, as we just spoke. You've mentioned about how Indian governance is the way that it is. What is your opinion on the recent protests that have been taking place? There was the CAA protest first, then there have been the farmers protest. There have been a number of different takes to it. There have been a number of different narratives to all the protests that have been given. If you protest, you are an anti-national. If you voice your dissent against the government, you are booked under sedition. What is going on, man? Tell us more about it.
So yeah, let's start with a class on basics, right?
Yes.
So let's
I'll take out a pen.
yeah, let's try to dissect this issue first by understanding what are states, nations, and governments. Okay, so they are all different concepts, but we use them interchangeably, right? Even in fact,
Right.
country is also a different concept, but we'll keep that out for now. So what is a state, right? So state is this abstract political institution which successfully claims the legitimate monopoly over the use of force. Okay, so because the state provides you certain things, so this is a definition by Max Weber, and the idea is that imagine you are in a jungle, okay, and there is what human rights do you have? Do you have any human rights in a jungle?
No,
I have
just
my freedom.
survival
Sorry,
is the top of
I have
mind.
my freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom
Yeah,
of
you have
what?
your
Freedom to
freedom,
do
but
what?
as Dwijendra said, your main aim is survival, right? And
Yeah.
as long as, I mean, you can live to the extent that you can survive from others, right? There is no
Right.
rule of law. There is nothing. There is the survival of the fittest, right? If you have power, you can survive. If you don't, you will sometimes get eaten, or sometimes you
Fair.
will be defeated, right? So
Fair.
there are no human rights in the
Yeah.
state of nature, right, per se. But
Yeah.
but we say we have human rights, right? What's the difference? Why do we say we have human rights? Because there is this political institution called the state, which has taken away some part of our rights in return of giving us others, right? So for example,
Yeah.
you can't own a gun without having certain laws laid down by this political institution called the state. So the state takes away some rights, and in return it gives you safety, security,
Yeah.
and some freedoms, etc., right? So that is what a state is. Okay, so for that to happen, the state has to successfully claim the legitimate use of force, right? So that's why you can't hold a gun, you can't do whatever you please, you can't kill people, because the state will come back at you. Okay, so this is what a state is, and states are generally semi-permanent. The state that we live in is the Republic of India, and it got made in 1947 and 1950, right? And there is this
Yeah.
constitution which says what is allowed by the state, what is not allowed by the state, how we the people have formed it.
It is a
Alright?
rule book, essentially.
Yeah. So constitution is a manifestation of how the state is supposed to be. All right.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
What is a nation? Nation is something which is completely different. Okay, nation is actually a mental construct. Okay, that's just that much. It's an imagined community that we have in our minds. Okay, so if you feel that you are a part of the Indian nation, you are. If you think you
Yeah.
are not a part of the Indian nation, you are not. Like that's pretty much it. It is just a mental construct, the way we imagine ourselves to be. Okay. And the third one is government. Government is actually a physical manifestation of the state. As I said, state is a political abstract institution, and the government is actually a set of people who are performing the roles that are laid down in the constitution, and they are also bound by the rules, right? It's not as if they can do what they want, but according to the state and the constitution, they have been given certain responsibilities and they perform it, right? So just to take an example, if you think of a corporation as a state, if that's a parallel, then the governing body, like the managing board, is the government. So
Fair.
that's the
Right.
so those are the three divisions. Okay, now let's look at this. What does it meant by being seditious, right? Now seditious, as we can see, it's nothing to do with the nation or the government. It has to do with the state. You should be able to threaten the state or its existence. And how do you threaten the state's existence? As I told you from the definition, that
By violating the constitution.
monopoly over the legitimate use of force, right? So if you are overturning that legitimate use of force, or you're trying to threaten that by violence, by violence against the state, then you can say that you are seditious. What it means is that being anti-national means you're going against the idea of the Indian nation, right? So you can say that I don't believe in the idea of Indian nation. I think India has 30 different nations, or India is so that is not seditious at all, right? Because it's just a mental construct, and you can't be punished for holding contrarian thoughts, right? I mean, if that is allowed, then we are no longer a republic in any case. So I can hold. I mean, I should be able to say that I don't believe in the idea of India, though I believe, say that strongly. But a person should be able to say that I don't believe in the idea of the Indian nation. I think there are 600 nations or whatever. Still, we are in this state called the Indian Republic. That should be fine.
So Pranay, all this makes sense. Like after you have explained to us the three different concepts. Okay, but to and it's a very theoretical concept, and it is in practicality also. But
And the
so
line of difference
most
between
number of
all three
people,
is very
yeah,
fine. There's a very
yeah.
fine
So
line
most people don't
between all three.
understand that. So if someone is discussing or saying on a public platform that I don't believe in the concept of Indian nation, so all the people listening to him or her would be like, yeah, he is being seditious, because for all of us, and even for, I think, both of us, Dojo, I can speak for you, state, nation, and everything meant the same
Today, yes.
till now, like till this point. So we would be like, yeah, he's speaking against the state or the nation or whatever. So that becomes seditious in the public opinion,
Yeah.
doesn't
So
it?
you can hold me as
हाँ, so
seditious.
doesn't matter ना, doesn't matter.
matter.
तेरे सोचने से क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
Yeah. So the idea is that what is it according to the law is what matters, right? So under the legal system, there is a very clear definition for what being seditious is, right? And as long as, so you would have seen the judgment which was given again for in favor of Disha Ravi as well, right?
Right,
So
right.
Yeah.
that was a very good judgment. I recommend all your listeners to read it as well. Very readable. Not many judgments are readable. They are like too legalese, but this was quite readable, and you will see very clearly the connection that the judge makes, right? That there is no connection, incitement of violence which threatens the state, so that cannot be seditious. Now, in the past, we've had instances where even the legal community has sort of taken a very extreme stance on what sedition is, but not in this case, thankfully. Okay, so yeah, I mean, broadly, being anti-government can never be seditious, right? I mean,
that's true. That's true.
At least in a republic, where republic basically means that your freedoms are guaranteed, the individual has certain rights according to the constitution, right? And so being anti-government should be fine. I would say being anti-national should also be fine. I mean, India has tolerated that, I mean, that should not be a problem. Being anti-state becomes a problem because the state wants to maintain its monopoly over the use of force, and if you threaten that, then the state will get back at you. So this is broadly the distinction. To this, I would also say, when people say blasphemy, right, and laws in blasphemy, like in Pakistan there are laws in blasphemy. Blasphemy laws, I think, are anti-national laws, right? As in the sense, blasphemy punishes people who are anti-national because they think that there is a vision of the nation, a mental construct of what Pakistan is, and if you are saying anything against a religion or a person, you are actually being anti-national, and they punish it. We don't want to go that path, I hope. So we should be fine not being having people who are anti-national.
No, I completely agree. Like with this point that sedition, the rule itself is a colonial era rule, and it's very subjective. Like it is very subjective to the judge. Like he can decide what is sedition and what is not, and it restricts the freedom of speech too much. Okay, so like you can decide, any judge can decide with a right leaning and decide, okay, this is not under freedom of speech, and any statement made is seditious. But having said that, I would also say that one of the statements that you make, that being anti-government is all right, which I agree, but being anti-national is all right. Somehow, I don't feel like that's a correct statement. I don't know.
So it is
Why?
your idea of a nation. Na? So it is your
Yeah.
idea of a nation, and your idea of a nation can differ from my idea of a nation. That is exactly what he said initially, and his
but
idea of a
being-
nation might be different. So whose idea of a nation are you opposing exactly? Yours, mine's, his. It is up to your interpretation.
Maybe the government's. Yeah, being anti-government seems all right.
No.
Yeah,
So
for some
again,
reason, the statement doesn't feel right.
Because the lines are blurring again. So for you,
Exactly.
the government has set out a narrative that this should be the idea of our nation, right? And that is probably in tune with the idea of the state that they want to enforce. And thus, anytime that you go
see, as I said, a nation is a mental construct, right? And
Exactly.
I wouldn't want anyone, forget the government, forget the Dalai Lama, forget anyone, to tell me what I should be thinking, right? Like, why should I agree to what the government says?
No,
I mean,
definitely. I think the problem arises when nation is a mental concept, but if someone is anti-national and because of his thoughts, it starts turning into action. Like if that person starts influencing other people with his thoughts, I think
Hmm.
maybe there the problem might arise. Until it is a mental concept, it's totally fine. But if that concept starts generating action,
No, I don't think that. So you can say that you have there is a problem with this, and of course, in fact, as strong Indian nationalists, we need to
yeah,
convince those people why India, why the Indian nation is a great thing. I mean, a Indian nation is something like the European Union, what it aspires to be. We are actually people from so many
yeah,
different
exactly.
nationalities, but
Hmm.
we've believed in this idea of one state called the Republic of India, which everyone from 1947 just bemoaned, saying that this state will not last for
Exactly.
another 10
Yeah,
years. But
yeah.
it has survived, right? So the idea is that, I mean, I strongly believe in the Indian nation, but I am okay with people who don't. And I want to convince them, right? I want to convince them that why Indian nation is great and why it is a good idea. But that's a different thing. And you can disagree with that idea, right? It's your
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
can be different than mine. But that does not mean that you can punish me or
Yeah,
the government.
definitely. Definitely. Not, you
That's
cannot.
that's all. That's all to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was refreshingly logical.
Yeah.
So my next question would be, why do we feel threatened then when some teenager tweets about whatever is going in our country, or some pop star tweets about whatever is going on in our country, and why is it such a massive ego issue, and why do we have to line up an array of superstars to just reciprocate to those two tweets in general? Matlab, is our
Yeah.
is our strength, is our moral fiber as a nation, is our self confidence so weak?
Yeah. So since I gave you a
Well,
framework,
that
let's
answers
look
it.
within that. Yeah, let's look within the framework that I told you, right? We saw, like, look at as a Venn diagram. There is a nation state and a government, right? Now
Hmm.
there is some overlaps in that. Now what's happening now is this idea of a nation, government, state, and one person is sort
Hmm.
of overlapping, okay,
Overlapping,
in
right?
people's minds.
Hmm.
So anything which is said even against the prime minister is construed as being against the
Against
state,
India.
or
Yeah.
against the government, or against being the nation. So why
Hmm.
should that happen, right? So I think that is a sort of one reason why we are heading down this path, and there are many reasons why we have become that polarized. Maybe it's because of the internet. It's not just an Indian case, right? It's been
Yeah.
there
It's
across
all
the
over
But
world.
social media.
but I would argue that we always have been polarized, and it is just the internet that is letting it out now in the open, in the public domain.
Right. That's to an extent that is true, but the internet has many different consequences which weren't there before. Okay, it's not
Yeah.
just the fact that you are voicing opinion; you are in a position to influence a debate as it is happening.
Correct.
Influence a situation that as it is happening. That wasn't the case earlier, right? Like,
Hmm.
so I mean, why is the government and many people so sensitive about something that Rihanna tweets from wherever, right? I mean, she wouldn't
Hmm.
even know about this situation. But
Yeah.
people are sort of so touchy about some of these things because internet allows you scalability, right? Now you are able to influence or at least participate in a debate while it is happening. So, like I say, there is no issue which is local now, right? Everything
Hmm.
is global, and because everything is global, there will be people who will feel that why is this person sort of responding, which is fine. I mean, as people we can disagree, but for a state, and then in this case the government, to pay attention with or to someone who's tweeting about this is totally counterproductive, because
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
going to strengthen more people to participate in such things. So I don't think it is quite useful for a government to get into something like this.
Yeah, like even I thought that people responding to this was okay, but the government officially responding to those tweets was a bit low. Like, why are you giving importance unless it is an official statement from the US government or any other
Hmm.
country? There was no business of the government to
So
respond to
that
those people.
that just indicates the insecurity, in my opinion, that they might be feeling.
Yeah, that's true. So it's insecurity. It is also the fact that Yeah, see that. So, I mean, we can come to our next concept that I wanted to discuss about, something called radically networked societies,
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
curious.
yeah.
So, and we can, from that framework, let's try to look at why the government is so sensitive. Okay, first, I think radically networked societies are one angle of politics in the information age. Okay, and the what we always teach is that we, until now, we had industrial age politics, right? Like this
Yeah,
idea of a
yeah.
nation state all came from European enlightenment after the printing press and all that. We can go
Hmm.
into more details later, but they were very industrial construct. Our states were also constructed like corporations. Everything
Exactly.
was,
Top down instructions are top down. The information flow is bottom up. Yeah,
yeah, and all the center is always stronger. The
yeah,
people at
yeah.
the edges are all, I mean, decentralization is weaker, right? All of them are
Yep.
like a corporation. But that industrial age, we moved on from that, right? Now we are in the information age, where information sharing abounds. Information, not just information sharing, but generation of information is also very different, right? There are no newspapers. I mean, you and I are talking, and this can go out soon. People are going to react to this and all that, right? So it's quite different. So information age politics and geopolitics is very different from industrial age geopolitics, and we are
Yep.
just trying to understand what this means. Okay, no
Hmm.
one in the world knows it. It's evolving. We are all
Yeah, we are
participants in
it.
this, right? Yeah, so in that sense, one angle of this entire information age politics is something called radically networked society. So a radically networked society is essentially a web of connected individuals who possess an identity and are motivated by a common immediate cause. Okay, so basically there are, if you look at it, a triangle, there are three on the vertices. There are sort of three things. One is a cause. Now that cause is sort of the political aspect, so it can be any immediate cause which gets people together. Then there is a sociological aspect, which is the identity. And then the third one is the network aspect, or which gives scale to any
Hmm.
radical network society, and which in our case is internet. Okay,
Hmm.
so essentially radically networked societies proliferate in this information age. Now, just a clarification, by radically networked societies, people always think of radicalization and terrorism and all that. So I'm not referring to that. Radical in this sense just means intensely connected. Okay, so this is a
Hmm.
very value neutral term. There is no judgment here. RNS
Yeah,
can
yeah.
bring great things also. They can also lead to sort of harmful consequences. So that is what an RNS is. And if you see, with the internet, there is one, the scalable aspect just massively goes up. The second thing that happens is, because you are connected, you can also form new nations, right? So like I said, nation is a mental construct, right? So you can feel that, now I'm more connected to a farmer in somewhere else, in some other country as well, because they share my sentiments. Or in a nation, a very important concept is who the them is, right? Because we
Yep.
define
Hmm.
an
Hmm.
us
Hmm.
with respect to a them. So if I feel my common enemy is one businessman whom I hate, then that might be a uniting thing for to form us, right? So
Yes.
so that is what leads to the second aspect, right? Because we are connected, we can also form new identities. So that was the second sociological aspect, right? And once we have formed new identities, we are always looking for causes. So if there is an immediate cause, something happens, a law is passed, a farm law is passed, or anything is such things happen, you are connecting those three dots, and an RNS has formed. And an RNS can operate in many ways. So one of the ways that RNS can operate is to mobilize, to protest.
Yep.
The other ways also, I mean, RNS can be there just to sort of get their opinions heard. There
Dude,
might be.
Manchester United Supporters Club is an RNS in that way.
So, is there an immediate cause?
Yeah, we want our CEO to be fired.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Then you can constitute. You can think of yourself as that. Yeah, definitely.
If there is an RNS for the farmers' protest in India, I think even their cause is the same, to remove
Yeah,
the
they want
CEO
the
of
CEO to
India.
be fired.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
So
he was saying.
how is an RNS relevant in the farmers' protest that we have been seeing? Obviously,
Right.
they have mobilized towards a common cause, which is the farm laws that were recently passed. And I want to touch on a larger point here. Are protests the right way to go if you are not convinced by something or not happy with something? Are protests effective at all? Are protests meaningful at all? Because how do you know that a protest is successful? I from when I have started understanding shit, I have seen the India against corruption protest, which was led by Anna Hazare. I so uska bhi mujhe pata nahi success failure kya hai. So there were a number of people with that protest. Usme Kiran Bedi went to a different party. Usme Arvind Kejriwal opened a separate party altogether. Anna Hazare को अभी भी कोई पूछ नहीं रहा था. So did that protest lead to anything? Not sure. अब इसके पहले एंटी CAA प्रोटेस्ट हुए थे. When did they end? Not sure. अभी तक मुझे क्लैरिटी नहीं है कि फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट चल भी रहे हैं या नहीं चल रहे हैं, क्या चल रहा है उसका. अगर कुछ मेजर इंसिडेंट होता है तो पता चलता है, अदरवाइज नॉट रियली. बीच में द शाहीन बाग प्रोटेस्ट टुक प्लेस, बट देन were they successful? Not sure. So are protests even the right way to go about making a difference to whatever you believe or what you believe against?
So there are actually two questions that you asked, right? One is the normative aspect of it, like should there be protests or not. The second question was, are protests effective or not? Effectiveness in general on protests, I mean, the Indian national movement was also a mass protest,
Right.
no? You can say that it was a protest.
Fair, fair, yeah.
It finally succeeded, no? So
Yeah.
so many protests, you're right that they are they fritter away soon, and you have to remember that state has immense resources at its power. Okay, so the state can run you down, the state can trample over you, the state will arrest you, the state will say you are seditious and you can be jailed or whatever, right? So states are always at an advantage against protesters. Okay, so that happens. That's why many states fail, right? There can be many things, right? You can do you can divide the people who are protesting, or you can unleash your own radically networked society against an already radically networked society. That's what happened in this case, right? So you had a lineup of stars who were sort of made to tweet out the same thing, and
Allegedly made to. Allegedly. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing is, in a radically networked society, it's even more very volatile, because you have people who are there is very little cost to you participating in tweeting, right? Like, what's the cost for Rihanna to tweet
Nothing.
about this? There's nothing. She didn't even tweet much. She just said we should pay attention to this. There's nothing about it, right? So there is low cost. People can participate from a large, very different areas, and they can be connected with this. But which also means that they are very little commitment to that cause, right? If the state comes heavy on you, they'll back off, right? Like, why the hell am I in this?
Yeah, we should not talk about it.
Yeah, or I mean, I don't want to get involved. It's just that because there are a large number of people and not all of them are big stakeholders in this, they are just weak stakeholders with a lot of power. Okay, they are not people who are actually influenced by the decision, right? Like, what happens in farm laws doesn't affect him or her in the US. But so now you take international examples, not just India, right? So you had Arab Spring. That was an example of RNSs in action. And only one country, Libya, there was a significant change in the way governments functioned. All
Egypt
others,
there is a military rule, na abhi?
Yeah, so all of them sort of returned to what they were earlier, right? So
within
there was
3 years, if I'm not wrong, Egypt there was again military rule was back.
Yeah, so Al-Sisi is there. Yeah, so he took power. So, anyways, I went all over the place, but we were talking about effectiveness, right? Yeah, some of them have been effective. I gave you a bunch of examples.
Yeah.
Some of them not so much. But the idea is that RNSs are here to stay. more and more people will form nations or using this imagined idea, and more of them will sort of try to protest. Coming to the second question, whether it is right or wrong, see, I would say peaceful protest is what the constitution allows, right? The state
Yes.
in the book that is there, it allows,
Hmm.
so that should be
Hmm.
fine. As long as it is so, there shouldn't be any problem. The problem happens when there is violence, which should be condemned, which should not happen, etc. Right? In the current context, I would also say that we have had a government which has tried to sort of go to the margins and challenge what our state itself and what our constitution itself promised, right? So just that CA thing, right, is sort of anti-constitutional. Okay,
How so?
because it affects a lot of people who are Indians, right? I mean, so when that happens, what option do people have, right? Like, then at some point of time, protests sort of become the last resort, and that's where the government, and a government which is so good in politics as this government, should be able to come over differences, should be able to find out solutions which are better than these, right? So just see this farm law thing, right? The laws are fine, there is no problem in laws. Every political
Yep.
party, their
Hmm.
manifesto has written these, that
Hmm.
these laws should be there. There's
Yeah.
nothing, but the way they have gone about it, they have not been able to convince people who mattered, right? And because of that, now the laws are in the docs, right? So they also said that for the next 18 months we are not interested in the laws, and after that elections will happen, so nothing's going to happen. Those laws are dead in the water.
So whose
There's
fault is it, Pranay? So whose fault is it? Is this the fault of the state who has not been able to convince the stakeholders, or is it misguided or maybe misunderstood protests that are taking place? Are the protests to blame, or is there a larger picture to it altogether? Ki there are forces which don't want the party to succeed or India to do well. That's why the protests are being sponsored, or there is a narrative saying that as well.
So whosoever I have talked to, they are either of this opinion that the protests are right and we should support the farmers, and there are people who are of the opinion that the government is right. Okay, I just want to consider what are the possibilities of this happening, that the farmers that are protesting, they are genuine protests, and like I believe it all the more because of the duration of the protest. And there is the government's opinion is that the farmers are being misguided by the arhatiyas, the middlemen. Like, is there
Hmm.
any possibility of such huge protests happening because of that?
everything in policy and politics is multi-causal. Okay, so there is like,
Yeah.
we can't have one cause. Some things will simmer beneath, and they might come up in some other instance, right? So uh, it's difficult to pin our hand on one particular cause, but still, let's go ahead and understand why something which is supposed to help the farmers
Yeah.
is being opposed by the farmers, right? If we try to understand that, probably we'll get somewhere. For that, you have to go into history, right? The idea is, why are people in one region protesting? Because
Hmm.
you have government policies since 1970s, for good reasons, because we didn't have grains back then. We were literally, there was a PL 480 agreement with US
US.
actually brought grains and all that, right? The green revolution story, we needed it
Yeah.
that time, right? And the way the government went about doing this is, you basically have a mass procurement system. Government promises that even if you grow rice and no one buys it, I will buy it,
Will
and
buy
that is what the MSP is, right? And that is what it started. But as you can see, MSP then over time increased, and it was no longer a minimum selling
Minimum,
price. It actually
maximum
became
selling price.
maximum also, right? So that is what happened. So probably it was needed in 1970s. It is we have a different problem now. We have like granaries overflowing.
Excess.
We don't want that, right? We want
Hmm.
people to export and earn money and all that, right? So now, if you look at it from this angle, it was the first rural employment guarantee scheme. Okay, this entire MSP business
Yes.
was a
Yep.
rural
Yep.
employment
Yep.
guarantee
Yep.
scheme started in 1970. Now you tell
Yep.
me, if there is a rural employment guarantee scheme which is given to you, okay, suppose you have been for 30 years you have been given an employment guarantee, itna paisa you will get for producing. Tomorrow I say that I am going to do something, and there is a chance that you might not get. I'm not going to say that, but you feel so. Are you going to accept it?
No.
There's no way you're going to accept it, right? 30 years you have been given, you are being employed. Think of it as an employee-employer relationship. You are actually employed by the government, and and tomorrow you are saying there might be something which is changing. You are not going to accept it, right? So you are going to. And
I think
remember,
this statement just answered one of my questions also that was in my mind, that I was thinking that the laws never say anything about MSP. So what's the problem? The example that you just gave us, that there is a chance that
The
it might go
notion
away.
that there might be a possibility. Yeah.
that's one angle, right? So what it means is that generally in public policy, right, you don't measure policies by their intentions. Okay, I mean, intentions are difficult to judge, and I'm not going to judge the government's intentions either. And in fact, some of the worst policies are made by some of the best intentions also, okay, like prohibition and all that. So forget that. So as a policy, this government went wrong in the sense that when you have people who are in any policy, people will be thinking in different ways, right? There will be losers, there will be winners. The best of public policies will have losers. The worst of public policies will also have some winners. Okay, so that happens. So it is the government which has to align these cognitive maps of people. So people who are losing out, the government needs to offer them something so that their protest or their concerns are sort of watered down. There needs to be a reach out, and governments have done that. I don't know, you guys wouldn't know, but we had in 2004 we had a national pension system move. We don't even talk about this because it just happened. All people in the government moved to a new pension system, which earlier, I don't know if you know, in government, if you are an employee there, after you retire, all your pension will be paid by the government, and you work in the private sector, but you contribute to your own pension, right? But in the government, that didn't happen till 2004. Okay, you lifelong pension hai aapko, and your pension will keep increasing as the DNS allowance of current employees increase. What a gravy train, right? Wonderful.
Nice.
And suppose I tell you that the government will take this away, what do you think will happen?
There will be massive protests. There will be people who are disgruntled.
But it was done, and there was no protest. Since after 2004,
because RNS didn't exist at that point of time.
No, not because of that also, because the idea was that maybe it was so because there was no internet.
There's no internet.
Internet.
But the big angle was that the government said, what was the reform which was done? It was said that people who are joining after 2004 will come under this system, and people who are already under a previous system will continue. Okay, so
you're signing up knowing all the rules.
So people who were in the government at that time weren't going to get affected, and the people who could protest weren't in the government at that time, right? This was in before 2004, right? Which
Smart.
means so I mean, there are many things you can do that way. Even in Air India, right, there's so much protest. You can just say people who are already employed will keep getting whatever they were going to get
for the next 3 years or so.
So, I mean, this government knows politics much better than you and I do. So there are various ways they could have sorted this out to align the cognitive maps. But I guess there was this arrogance that we can get things done because we know what it means, and we understand, and they got it wrong, right? So they got it wrong, and that's why you see people who, even though there's no MSP mentioned, now doubt the intentions of the government itself, right? So now once you have that suspicion, then you can kuch bhi story you can make, like that this is done for Adani, Ambani, this is done for ABC. Yeah, you can, and in RNSs you can create new narratives every day. So that is what I think is a failure of the government. And there are lots of other people have written about it, how the procedures were sort of bypassed. You did an ordinance, you did a voice vote, sort of through the Rajya Sabha. So you didn't align cognitive maps of people who are going to lose out. You didn't tell people how their concerns will be addressed. And
So I think that
think
has been a common failing or a common policy of this government over the last few years. So all the major steps or the major policies that they have undertaken, be it the farm laws, they just bulldoze the laws that they want to enforce without, as you said, aligning all the stakeholders involved. Demonetization पे you were given 4 hours of notice, and कल से ये हो रहा है, and you don't have a say in that. You don't have a say in how to access your own money. Maybe it is a deep-rooted arrogance or something else, but that is what probably pisses off people to an extent. Maybe the government is well intentioned, but the sheer arrogance and the sheer lack of apathy towards the stakeholders probably pisses off people.
if you have very concentrated benefits and the government tries to take away concentrated benefits, or there are concentrated costs, then there will be an urge to protest. Otherwise, if the interest, benefits, or costs are diffused, you will not protest. I mean, petrol prices have risen 100
Yeah.
rupees. Did you
Yeah.
protest? Protest. Because if the interests are diffused, the costs are diffused over millions of people. But here the costs are concentrated, right? There is a section of people who are going grains for 30 years, and the government, not 30 years, 50 years.
Yes, yes,
and the
yes.
government had gone. So, I mean, even if there's a hint that this will change, you are going to go up and, take protest against the government. And especially farming in India is glorified, right? Like, there, it's not thought of as a profession. It is thought of as something which
Service
is
to
different.
the nation.
It's just like Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. Even our mottos are like that. So it is not thought of as an economic thing which we can argue on. It's emotional, so it is all the more susceptible. And when you have concentrated costs coming in, there will be these repercussions which happen.
Till now I was thinking that the government, okay, they passed it in a not in a normal way and by brute force, and so what's the problem with it? They would have got it passed anyway because they have the majority. But what you told us right now is that it is the responsibility of the government to take into confidence the people also.
And I don't care about this government or that government, but just look at the reforms, right? Like, what's the status of that? Reforms are in the dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And which other government is now going to take anything on farming for some time to come, right?
NDA 3 maybe.
Yeah, so even NDA 3 will be very jittery, man. Like, look at their experience. So net, as a society and as a country, we lose out, because of what was attempted and it didn't go anywhere.
Would you say that we are in a hostile state right now? Because we see the institutions being compromised quite a bit. Like Vishu said a while earlier, that the freedom of expression is so tuned to your own opinion. There are so many vague areas or gray areas in that, and we have seen a number of decisions of late, number of arrests being made, a number of IT raids, so to speak, at prominent people who tend to voice out against the present government. So
the fact is that because whenever you have a government and a person, if they become bigger than what our constitution is, then these things will happen, right? Like, and it's not just with India, as I said, it's a global phenomenon, right? Like, there was Trump, also the way he sort of went about doing things which were very antagonistic to the US's idea of the republic
of their nation. Yes, of their nation.
Not just nation, of the state, right? The republic, the US
republic as well. Yes,
1776, what was formed, there were things which he tried to challenge, right? So but the difference was, in US there were still people who were not on the side of Trump. They were openly sort of big names, right? I mean, people, the entire Hollywood was sort of against. That doesn't happen in India, right? And that is worrying, not because it is Modi or anti-Modi. I mean, that's not the idea. But the fact is that there is a fear, right? There is a fear that what I say against a government can be construed as being anti-state or anti-nation as well, right? And that is not a positive sign. I mean, it's just like saying that if you agree to one idea, one person, you are submitting yourself to whatever one person or one party thinks, you are not going to get the outcome that you want, right? The idea is we the people constructed this state, and we have a government who's running the state. It's not the other way around, right? It's not that the government is saying and we are the subjects of the government, right? So if we if we fall under that we want to be subjects, the government knows everything, the person knows everything, and they are always going to do good for us, then there's no problem, right? I mean, if we have reconciled to that, it's fine. But I don't think we've reconciled to that, right? We all want to strongly think that we want more prosperity for Indians, we want betterment of all Indians, and we have different ways, different ideas of how that can be achieved. But the idea is not that one person or one even a political formation will know what's good for us, right? Our good,
but 85% of today's population do think that way, no? So they do think that that one person does know everything, that that one person is the shining light, and that one person will, whatever he will do will be for the betterment of the country. That is the
Right.
opinion that is being formed.
Yeah. So you are entitled to your opinions, and others, the 15% who don't agree, are also entitled to theirs, right?
Would you say that the government has been ruling by fear, using the radically networked societies, and by imparting some level of fear that you need us at the center to ward off all the evil forces that are at our borders, and everybody who's trying to interfere and bring us down, you need us at the center? So is it a governance by fear, in your opinion?
Governance by fear, for some people are pretty much for it, right? So I think I mean, not getting into the partisan politics of it, but this government has managed to convince a lot of people that it is what can protect the nation, the state together, right? That is what they have effectively done, and that's why a lot of people have submitted their own thinking to what the government says.
So here's my point of view, Pranay and Duju. I feel that I am living in a very small bubble, and many of us are living in a very small bubble where we feel that whatever is happening right wing, that religion doesn't matter. Like, to many people in our group, it doesn't matter, and like it's a waste of time. But there is a huge majority of people, like even in the urban areas, I won't say just rural areas, to them it matters, and whatever the ruling party is telling them, it matters to them somehow. So are we right in thinking that, okay, we are the educated ones, we are the literate ones, and we are right, and how are we just discounting their opinion? Like,
I agree to the fact that we are living in a very small bubble. So I was listening to another podcast, Abhi, where all the arguments were whatever we are influenced by is a very very small bubble. But is there a way that we can step out of the bubble and maybe work towards a more holistic approach?
There is a perception that we live in echo chambers, right? In fact, with the RNS, you are more likely to encounter opinions of the opposite side, with on the internet, on social media. Earlier, you would just buy your favorite newspaper, see the favorite news channel that you want. So in fact, that you lived in more echo chambers. Now the size of your echo chambers has increased, right? And you share things that people like, and what they will like. That definitely has grown in size, but at the margins, to define us, you require a them, right? So, and that's why we are always in search of an enemy, right? Or some sort of. So we are in fact coming more and more into a confrontation with people of the other viewpoint. So that is what's happening. It's not just that we are living in our own echo chambers, but we are also contesting with other opinions. My thinking is very simple on this point. The idea is that I'm looking at it from one, the government is formed by we the people. It's not the government who's for us. I mean, it's not that the government can tell me what to do. I am not. I don't want to become political. In effect, lots of people have become sort of party members of a political party, right? They
Yeah.
don't have a badge, they don't
Yeah.
have a number, they don't have a membership number. But how, if you are just batting for one political party, irrespective of what their decisions are, it doesn't mean that you are thinking of governance. You're thinking in very narrow partisan terms. So that is not what I would like Indian and Indians to be, right? We want the government to work for us to achieve the best outcomes. We have had one full decade of slow economic growth. We want to bring people out of poverty. That is what we want the government to do. We don't want them to get into things which are related to, which will take this entire project and idea of India, which promised nothing succeeds like success. And the fact is, we are together as India and as one state and one nation because we've been successful since 1950, 1947. I mean, India has overcome a lot of challenges, and we don't want that project to again get defeated by things which try to divide us in one way or the other, right? That's harmful. That's
We don't want the government to be responding to tweets from Rihanna and Greta Thunberg. We want government to be responding to tweets from lakhs of people कि give us employment.
Yeah.
उसके ऊपर कुछ response करो.
That's where we want governance, right? I mean, this party is there, that party is there, that person is there, tomorrow the person won't be there. Those things happen.
Doesn't really matter, yeah.
It's about governance, but that's difficult to sort of argue in radically networked society angle that we are living.
Pranay, it has been absolutely enriching speaking to you, and genuinely thank you so much for taking so much time out for us and taking a class for us. It is effectively like we were sitting on the first bench and we were listening to a lecture, and it was absolutely enthralling listening to you.
People on the first bench,
it was like one of the better podcasts that we did. Like till now, we had podcast where it was sometimes it became a question answer session, but here we had a proper discussion.
So
I would just like to say, people on the first bench sleep off during a class. So I hope this wasn't for all of you. And,
absolutely.
I mean, great going with the podcast. All the best. Hope you get millions of listeners. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. Keep it going, guys.
Thanks, Pranay.
Thanks, Pranay. Thank you so much for taking time out, man.